The ancient oak doors of the Hogwarts library sighed shut behind Lysander Thorne, muffling the distant, unsettling laughter that had become the soundtrack to the modern wizarding world. A sixth-year Ravenclaw, Lysander usually found solace amidst the towering shelves, the scent of old parchment a comforting balm against the chaos of his thoughts. But even here, the creeping malaise had taken root. He settled at his usual table, a worn spot by a window overlooking the Black Lake, pulling a hefty tome on theoretical warding from his satchel. His fingers, long and accustomed to tracing fine print, brushed against the leather cover, noting the subtle shift in its texture. It felt stickier than usual, almost tacky despite its age. He opened it, and a glyph on the dedication page, a standard protective sigil, seemed to subtly warp, its lines elongating into a grotesque, mocking caricature of its original intent. Lysander frowned, his brow furrowing deeper than usual. He wasn't imagining it. He couldn't be. This was the third time this week he'd observed such an anomaly. Beyond the window, a group of first years was attempting a simple Wingardium Leviosa charm. Instead of a feather gracefully lifting, one shot erratically skyward, then slammed back down, flattening into a morbidly comic smear of white and gray. A few giggled. One, a small Hufflepuff girl with wide, vacant eyes, began to laugh uncontrollably, a high-pitched, breathless sound that didn't match the mirthless expression on her face. Her friends nervously backed away, casting worried glances at her, then at the squashed feather. The Grinning Sickness, as it was now morbidly dubbed, was spreading. It wasn't a curse in the conventional sense, no fever, no boils, no discernible magical residue that Lysander or any other theoretical magic enthusiast could identify. It began with an inexplicable giddiness, an urge to laugh at inappropriate moments, then spiraled into a permanent, maddening rictus of mirth that masked a deep, unshakable despair. The Ministry's healers were baffled. St. Mungo's was overflowing. Lysander closed his warding book with a soft thud, a cold dread seeping into his methodical mind. He was seeing patterns, insidious threads connecting seemingly disparate incidents, the corrupted enchantments, the inexplicable outbreaks of forced laughter, the growing sense of unease that clung to Hogwarts like a damp shroud. Logic, his lifelong anchor, was failing him. Later that afternoon, navigating a bustling corridor, Lysander found himself nearly tripping over a group of agitated students. A sixth-year Slytherin, notorious for his vanity, was shrieking as his meticulously coiffed hair suddenly sprouted small, twitching tentacles. Lysander, ever the observer, noticed the source. A scourgify charm, cast by a distraught second year, had rebounded, twisting the simple cleaning spell into something monstrously absurd. The Slytherin's shrieks soon dissolved into a strange, guttural chuckle, his eyes glazing over as the tentacles writhed. Honestly, what is wrong with everyone lately? A voice snapped, cutting through the rising panic. Sera Croft, a Gryffindor with a formidable spirit and a no-nonsense attitude, pushed through the crowd, her ginger braids swinging like a pendulum of exasperation. She held a broken inkwell, its former contents, a shimmering, cerulean blue ink, now morphing into a viscous, tar-like goo that oozed sluggishly onto the stone floor. Just trying to clean up a spilled potion, and now my ink's gone sentient and looks like dragon snot. This isn't even funny anymore. Lysander, still reeling from the Slytherin incident, approached her cautiously. It's not just a prank, Sera. It's systemic. I've been observing minor charms, protective wards, even basic transfigurations. They're all exhibiting a similar pattern of corruption. A distortion of intent, a cruel twist of purpose. He gestured vaguely towards the corridor, his mind already formulating a complex diagram of possible magical contagion vectors. Sera snorted, wiping her hands on her robes with a grimace. Corruption, Thorne? You mean some gits found a new way to mess with magic, probably a dark arts enthusiast trying to be the next Grindelwald. There's always someone, isn't there? Just needs a good smack with a reductor curse to set em straight. She gave the using inkwell a disgusted look. And honestly, sentient ink? What kind of twisted sense of humor does that take? But it's not random. It's specific. Like a perversion, Lysander pressed, feeling a familiar frustration. Sera always saw the immediate, practical solution, while he saw the underlying, theoretical problem. And the grinning sickness, it coincides perfectly with these magical aberrations. It's not a coincidence, Sera. It's all connected. Sera finally met his gaze, her fierce green eyes losing some of their impatience, replaced by a flicker of genuine concern. Connected how, Lysander? What's the grand theory this time? A new strain of goblin pox that infects magic itself? A cosmic alignment of snarky planets? He bristled slightly at her dismissive tone, yet acknowledged the kernel of truth in her worry. No, nothing's so simple. It's an intelligence. A malevolent will operating through a new vector, twisting not just spells, but sanity. It thrives on despair disguised as amusement. He paused, his own words unsettling him. It's as if something is trying to turn our entire reality into a very bad joke. Sera stared at him, her mouth slightly open, then she let out a short, humorless laugh. A bad joke? You really think some dark wizard out there is just trying to be a cosmic prankster? She shook her head, but the anger was gone, replaced by a deep unease. Well, whatever it is, I'm getting sick of it. My practical char work is failing, and half the Gryffindors are either giggling maniacally or trying to accio their own eyeballs. Something needs to be done, Lysander, and a theory isn't going to fix anything. Before Lysander could respond, a low, ominous hoot echoed from the nearby corridor. A large, ebony-feathered owl, one he vaguely recognized as belonging to Professor Felia's Blackwood, landed neatly on his shoulder, dropping a heavy, parchment scroll into his hand. The owl's intelligent, amber eyes seemed to bore into him for a moment before it silently took flight again, disappearing around the corner. The scroll was unmarked, sealed with an arcane sigil Lysander had never seen before, a swirling vortex within a mocking, crescent grin. His heart gave an involuntary lurch. He unrolled it, his fingers surprisingly steady despite the sudden prickle of apprehension. The message inside was brief, penned in Blackwood's notoriously spiky script. Thorne, library, room 7, within the hour. No detours. No questions. Bring your intellect. We're out of time. Lysander felt a knot tighten in his stomach. Professor Blackwood, the reclusive former unspeakable, rarely left his office, let alone sent urgent, cryptic summons. Known for his encyclopedic knowledge of forbidden lore and interdimensional anomalies, Blackwood was a man who saw shadows where others saw only light, and now those shadows had stretched to engulf them all. Blackwood, Sera asked, sensing the sudden shift in his demeanor. What's he want? I don't know, Lysander admitted, the words feeling dry in his throat. But if Professor Blackwood is getting involved, then this isn't just a new dark arts fad, Sera. This is something else entirely. Something worse. He looked at the sigil on the parchment again, the swirling vortex and the crescent grin. It was an unsettling image, and for the first time, Lysander felt a tremor of fear that logic couldn't explain away. He had always sought patterns, but this pattern felt like a trap, carefully laid, waiting for him. He bade Sera a quick farewell, ignoring her bewildered expression, and strode purposefully towards the restricted section of the library, towards room 7. Each step echoed in the suddenly silent corridor, the distant, manic laughter now sounding less like a general symptom of the world and more like a specific, mocking welcome, calling him deeper into the heart of the enigma. Professor Blackwood's office within an office, a hidden room within the restricted section, was as Lysander remembered it, a chaotic symphony of arcane artifacts, ancient scrolls, and glowing runes etched into the very stones of the wall. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and dust, a protective ward thrumming softly, keeping the world at bay. Blackwood himself sat behind a massive, claw-footed desk piled high with obscure texts, his gaunt face illuminated by the flickering light of a single, caged lumos charm. His eyes, usually sharp and cynical, held a grim weight Lysander had never witnessed. Thorne, you came. Blackwood's voice was a low rasp, cutting through the silence. He didn't offer a seat. Good. We don't have the luxury of pleasantries. He gestured towards a scrying orb on his desk, its surface swirling with nebulous, dark energies. You've been observing the grinning sickness, the magical anomalies, haven't you? Lysander nodded, suddenly feeling like a first year again, yet invigorated by the implicit recognition of his intellect. Yes, Professor. The perversion of intent, the illogical distortions, the psychological impact, it's unlike any magical contagion or curse I've studied. It seems to feed on chaos and despair, yet manifest as perverse amusement. Blackwood's lips, thin and bloodless, quirked in a humorless imitation of a smile. Perceptive. Too perceptive for your own good, perhaps. Most dismiss it as a new strain of madness or a particularly virulent curse. They cling to the known, because the unknown will break them. He leaned forward, his eyes boring into Lysander. You're right, Thorne. It is an intelligence. A predator unlike any our world has ever encountered. He tapped a gnarled finger on the scrying orb, and the nebulous energies within coalesced, forming a fleeting, horrifying image, a pale, gaunt face, eyes wide with a manic glee, framed by a grotesque, impossibly wide grin. It vanished as quickly as it appeared, but the image seared itself into Lysander's mind. Its name, or what it has been called in other realities, is irrelevant. Here, it is simply the grin of the void, Blackwood whispered, his voice laced with a chilling finality. And it has come for us all. Lysander stared, a profound, primal fear coiling in his gut. His logical mind screamed for more information, for a tangible threat, but the glimpse of that face, the name, the sheer, impossible horror of it, froze him. He had sought knowledge, but this felt like knowledge that could shatter him. This is not a wizard, Thorne. Not a demon, not a fiend of any known magical lineage. It is a concept, a philosophical horror given form. It seeks not power, but despair. Not conquest, but the absolute unraveling of all sanity, all hope. It wants to turn everything into a twisted joke, a monument to the meaninglessness of existence. Blackwood's gaze intensified. And it chose our world to play its next game. What do we do? Lysander finally managed, his voice barely a whisper. The question, usually so easy, now felt impossibly heavy. Blackwood picked up an ancient, leather-bound book from his desk, its cover devoid of a title, and slid it across to Lysander. We fight it with what it fears most, Thorne. Understanding. But first, you must learn about it. Delve into what others dare not. Find its weaknesses, its vulnerabilities. Because if we don't, Lysander, he concluded, his voice dropping to a terrifying drone, our world will become nothing more than a punchline in its cosmic jest. The book felt cold and heavy in Lysander's hands. The implications of Blackwood's words settled over him, suffocating his intellect, his logic, his very sense of self. A chilling, distant peal of laughter seemed to echo from the very walls of the office, and for the first time, Lysander understood that he wasn't just observing a problem. He was now, irrevocably, a part of the joke. The air in Lysander's chest felt thin, as if the oxygen itself had been consumed by the terrible weight of Professor Blackwood's ominous warning. Something worse. The phrase echoed, each syllable a tolling bell of dread. He'd barely slept, the image of that ghastly grin, the one Professor Fig had displayed before her final, terrifying laughter, burning behind his eyelids. He arrived at Blackwood's office precisely at the appointed time, 11 p.m. The gargoyle guarding the entrance remained stoic, but Lysander felt a prickle on his skin, a sense of being watched that went beyond the usual late-night Hogwarts eeriness. The door to Blackwood's office was already ajar, a sliver of candlelight visible within. No knock was needed. Blackwood sat hunched over his desk, not under the usual enchanted lamp, but by the flickering glow of an ancient, enchanted candle whose flame pulsed with an unnatural violet hue. Scrolls and arcane artifacts lay scattered around him, many shimmering with faint, protective charms. He looked more drawn than ever, his gray hair a wild halo, his eyes like two chips of obsidian fixed on Lysander. Thorne, Blackwood rasped, his voice rougher than Lysander remembered. He gestured to the worn armchair opposite him. Sit. There's much to discuss, and little time. Lysander obeyed, his heart thrumming. He noticed a faint tremor in Blackwood's hand as he pushed a small, leather-bound volume across the desk. Its cover was blank, save for a single, intricately carved symbol, an Ouroboros, but instead of eating its tail, the serpent's head was twisted into a grotesque, perpetual laugh. "You've observed the signs," Blackwood began, his voice low and serious. "The grinning sickness, the warping of simple charms, the unsettling laughter. What you've witnessed is merely the shadow of a much greater horror." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "This isn't a dark wizard, Lysander. Not a new Voldemort. This is something else. An entity from beyond our understanding, from a place where magic and sanity are merely playthings. We call it the Grin of the Void." Lysander swallowed, the name itself a mouthful of ash. The Grin of the Void? "It has many names in many dimensions," Blackwood continued, his gaze distant, as if seeing beyond the office walls. "In one reality, it was a hero, twisted by exposure to fear toxins and the multiverse's deepest horrors, becoming a laughing mockery of everything it once stood for. A cosmic joke brought to life. It seeks not power nor dominion, but pure, unadulterated despair." Lysander felt a cold dread seep into his bones, colder than any Dementor's chill. "Interdimensional? Like a being from another universe." "Precisely. And not just any universe, but one steeped in even deeper shadows than our own. Imagine a world where the very concept of heroism was perverted, where hope itself became the cruelest lie. It feeds on the unraveling of sanity, the collapse of joy into madness, the transformation of noble intent into grotesque parody. Our world, with its vibrant magic and its fragile, rebuilt peace, is a ripe fruit for its amusement." Blackwood paused, taking a slow, shaky breath. "Its magic isn't inherently evil in the way we understand it. It's twisted. It doesn't cast Avada Kedavra. It casts a spell that makes you laugh yourself to death while your loved ones watch, unable to intervene. It doesn't merely break a ward. It turns the ward into a psychological trap that devours your courage. It warps intent and perception. It makes you believe the horror is funny, that the despair is beautiful." Lysander gripped the arms of the chair. This wasn't a problem to be solved with a powerful spell or a well-placed counter-curse. This was an assault on the very fabric of reality and consciousness. How did it get here?" "A breach," Blackwood sighed, rubbing his temples. "A tear in the veil between dimensions. Perhaps a careless bit of experimental magic, perhaps a deliberate act from its own twisted mind, seeking new playgrounds. We don't know the exact mechanism, but the result is clear. Its influence spreads like a psychic contagion, starting subtly, then consuming all it touches." "So, what do we do?" Lysander's mind, despite the terror, was already racing, trying to categorize, to analyze, to find a pattern. "How do you fight something that isn't even from here?" Blackwood pushed the blank, Ouroboros-bound book further across the desk. "Knowledge, Thorne. It always starts with knowledge. This tome isn't just a book. It's a guide, a compendium of forgotten lore, of anomalies and breaches. I've spent my life studying the fringes, the things that go bump in the multiverse. The answers, or at least the path to them, lies within these pages. But be warned, the Grin's influence isn't limited to physical spaces. It can seep into information, into memories, into your very thoughts." "Psychological warfare," Lysander murmured, connecting the dots. "Indeed. It will try to break you. To make you doubt your senses, your purpose, your very sanity. Everything it shows you will be a joke, a cruel jest designed to strip you of hope. Trust nothing but your own unwavering will. And perhaps, your instincts, as illogical as they may seem." Blackwood's gaze lingered on him, a flicker of something akin to grim hope in his eyes. "You have a brilliant mind, Thorne. Use it. Find the patterns, the weaknesses, the contradictions in its twisted logic. There must be a way to sever its connection to our reality, to send it back to the void." Lysander took the book. It felt cool and strangely heavy in his hands, almost humming with dormant energy. A wave of exhaustion, deep and bone-weary, washed over him, yet beneath it, a desperate spark of resolve ignited. He wasn't just researching a theoretical problem anymore. He was researching to save his world, his sanity. He spent the next few days holed up in the Ravenclaw common room, then retreating to the relative quiet of an unused classroom, the ancient tome his sole companion. He devoured its contents, scribbling notes furiously, his usually meticulous handwriting becoming increasingly frenzied. The book was a labyrinth of obscure theories, half-truths, and terrifying warnings. It spoke of reality scars, laughing dimensions, and echoes of despair. The psychological manifestations began subtly, just as Blackwood had warned. At first, it was the sound of distant, mocking laughter, always just beyond the range of hearing, like a memory of a bad joke. Then, words in his textbooks began to shift, rearranging themselves into nonsensical, yet strangely unsettling phrases. A passage on charms might suddenly read, "To mend a heart, break it first, then glue the pieces with tears." One evening, while reading about ancient warding rituals, he swore the intricate designs on the page pulsed with a faint, derisive grin. He blinked, and they were normal again. He started to question his own perception, attributing it to fatigue. But the phenomena grew bolder. He'd find himself humming strange, discordant tunes that he couldn't recall ever hearing. Reflections in windows would seem to hold his own face, but with a momentary, unsettling twist of his lips into a wide, unnatural smile. He even caught himself stifling a giggle during a potions class, a sound utterly alien to his usual serious demeanor. He tried to share these experiences with Sera, catching her as she barreled out of the Great Hall one afternoon. "Sera," he started, "have you noticed anything odd? Besides the sickness, I mean. Like, sounds or things moving?" Sera, ever practical, arched an eyebrow. "Odd? Lysander, the divination professor, just tried to teach us to read tea leaves shaped like miniature exploding birdie bots every flavor beans, and the care of magical creatures class had to deal with a flock of bowtruckles that decided all the trees in the forbidden forest were hilarious. Everything is odd. Are you getting enough sleep? You look like you've been using your hair to clean the chimneys." He ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "No, I mean, personally. Like you're seeing things that aren't there, or hearing laughter." Sera paused, her expression softening with concern. "Lysander, are you sure you're all right? You've been glued to that weird book Blackwood gave you. Don't let it get to your head. Some of those old texts can mess with you." He trailed off, realizing how insane he sounded. She wouldn't understand the creeping, insidious dread, the way the grin wasn't just out there, but worming its way in here. Back in his secluded classroom, the full weight of Blackwood's warning crashed down on him. The grin wasn't merely a creature. It was a concept, an entity that infected the very idea of reality. Its magic wasn't about casting spells. It was about warping the fundamental rules of magic, bending perception, twisting purpose. It made a shield charm not just fail, but turn into a snare that fed on the caster's fear, rendering them hysterical. It could make a simple Lumos charm erupt into an illusion of blinding, derisive light, causing temporary madness. He flipped another page in Blackwood's tome, his fingers trembling. A faded illustration depicted grotesque figures dancing in a circle, their faces stretched into permanent, manic grins. Beneath it, a single line in a language he barely recognized, but which the book offered a rough translation. "The grin does not merely break reality. It makes reality itself a cruel jest. Its prisons are not walls, but ideas. Its weapons are not curses, but the shattering of all you hold dear." A cold wave of understanding washed over him, chilling him to the bone. The grin wasn't just trying to kill them, it was trying to turn their world into a cosmic puppet show, their lives into an endless, horrifying comedy. The logical, academic approach he usually took was insufficient. This required a different kind of fight, a battle for the very soul of sanity. As he closed the book, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper brushed against his ear, so close he felt a shiver run down his spine. It was a soft, guttural chuckle, devoid of mirth, yet filled with an undeniable, chilling amusement. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with it, a silent tremor of derision. He looked around wildly, but the classroom was empty. Yet, the sound lingered, echoing not in the air, but directly inside his mind. Then, from the corner of his eye, he saw it. A dark, shifting shadow detached itself from the wall near the window. It began to coalesce, to take form, not as a solid being, but as an unsettling absence in the light, vaguely humanoid, but elongated, its limbs too long, its head tilting at an impossible angle. And in the space where a face should be, 2 pinpricks of light glowed with malevolent glee, forming the undeniable, terrifying silhouette of a Grin. It wasn't a physical manifestation, not entirely. It was an optical illusion, a shadow playing tricks, yet it felt utterly real, utterly menacing. It was a direct psychological attack. Lysander felt a surge of adrenaline, and for the first time in his life, his intellect didn't counsel retreat. It screamed, it knows you're researching. It's playing with you. It wants you to break. He scrambled backwards, overturning his chair, his mind racing for a counter-charm, a ward, anything. But he knew, with chilling certainty, that any conventional magic would be twisted, turned against him. This was a foe that fought on the battlefield of the mind. The shadowy Grin seemed to widen, stretching impossibly, and from it, a faint, rustling sound, like parchment turning, or perhaps, bones creaking with laughter. Lysander clutched the ancient book to his chest, his eyes darting frantically. The Grin of the Void was no longer content to merely influence. It was actively watching. And it was ready to play. He had to find a way to fight back before the entire world became its stage and everyone in it, its screaming, laughing puppets. But what did you do when the joke was on reality itself? And how did you fight an enemy that wanted nothing more than to make you laugh until you shattered? The question hung heavy in the air, a challenge from the void itself. His blood ran cold. He had just realized the horrifying truth. The Grin of the Void wasn't just an external threat. It was already inside. He knew what he had to do next. He had to delve deeper into the twisted logic of this cosmic joker. He had to find the source of its amusement, the punchline to its horrific jest. And then, somehow, he had to find a way to stop it from being funny. He had to make it cry. The air in the Ravenclaw dormitories felt heavier than usual, thick with an almost palpable sense of unease. Lysander Thorne, still reeling from Professor Blackwood's revelation of the Grin of the Void, pushed himself out of bed. The pale morning light filtering through the window seemed to carry an unnerving shimmer, and the usually soothing sound of the distant Great Lake now seemed to echo with a faint, sardonic chuckle. He dressed quickly, his mind a whirlwind of fragmented theories and frantic deductions. An interdimensional entity that fed on despair and chaos, warping reality with cruel amusement? It defied every logical framework he had painstakingly built. He needed to find Sera. Stepping into the common room, he found it subtly altered. The ornate tapestries depicting scholarly achievements now showed scholars with unnervingly wide, fixed grins, their eyes empty. The bronze eagle knocker at the entrance, usually stoic, seemed to be vibrating with suppressed laughter. Lysander swallowed hard, a cold not forming in his stomach. This wasn't just in his mind. The Grin's influence was spreading, subtly, insidiously. He found Sera waiting for him outside the portrait hole to Gryffindor Tower, her face grim. Her fiery red hair seemed to crackle with an unusual energy, a physical manifestation of her indignation. "Did you feel that?" she asked, her voice low and tight. "The whole castle feels like it's holding its breath, waiting for a punchline." "It's the Grin," Lysander murmured, rubbing his temples. "Blackwood warned me. It warps perception, reality itself. It's not just casting illusions, Sera, it's twisting the very fabric of our environment into a mockery." They made their way down the grand staircase, their footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the suddenly silent corridors. The portraits, usually a cacophony of greetings and gossip, were eerily still. Their painted eyes, however, followed Lysander and Sera with an intensity that sent shivers down Lysander's spine, and every now and then, a single, silent tear would track down a painted cheek, followed by an equally silent, grotesque grin. As they reached the great hall, the full horror of the Grin's influence truly hit them. The enchanted ceiling, instead of reflecting the gentle morning sky, showed a swirling vortex of sickening green and purple, occasionally parting to reveal glimpses of a starry, yet entirely wrong, void. The house tables, usually laden with steaming platters of food, were piled high with grotesque parodies of breakfast. Toast was charred black in the shape of mocking faces, sausages writhed like worms, and pumpkin juice shimmered with an oily, iridescent sheen. But it was the students that truly broke Lysander's composure. They sat, rigidly upright, their faces pale and drawn, their eyes wide and glassy. A few picked at their food mechanically, but most simply stared ahead, a faint, unsettling gurgle of laughter escaping their lips every few seconds, a hollow, joyless sound that spoke of utter despair. Even the professors at the high table seemed unnaturally still, Professor McGonagall's stern face frozen in a rictus of forced amusement, her eyes starting nervously. This isn't right, Sera whispered, her hand instinctively going to her wand. Are they possessed? No, not exactly, Lysander said, his voice trembling. It's a psychological contagion. The Grinning Sickness. It's feeding them despair, twisting their minds until all they can do is laugh at their own misery. Their magic is probably corrupted too, making them susceptible. Suddenly, a plate of burnt toast on the Gryffindor table rose into the air, spinning slowly before exploding into a shower of black ash that settled over a nearby student, who responded with another one of those hollow giggles. We can't stay here, Sera declared, grabbing Lysander's arm and pulling him back out of the Great Hall. We need to find Professor Blackwood. He'll know what to do. They navigated the labyrinthine corridors, which seemed to writhe and shift around them. Walls appeared to undulate, familiar tapestries melted into disturbing images, and the suits of armor in the alcoves now wore helmeted grins, their visors dark and unsettling. Whispers followed them, faint at first, then growing louder, circling Lysander specifically. Clever boy, aren't you? A voice hissed from the shadows. Always in the books. Never in the real world. Your parents, they disappeared, didn't they? Vanished, just like a bad joke. Lysander flinched, his steps faltering. He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the insidious taunts. He knew it was the grin, twisting his deepest insecurities, but the words still clawed at his resolve. Sera, ever observant, noticed his distress. Don't listen to it, Lysander, she snapped, pulling him forward. It's just trying to get inside your head. Focus on my voice. They reached the dungeon corridor leading to Blackwood's office, but the familiar stone walls had taken on a new, menacing quality. The flickering torchlight cast long, distorted shadows that seemed to dance with malevolent glee. A large, iron-bound door at the end of the corridor, usually innocuous, now resembled a gaping, toothy maw. It knows where we're going, Lysander breathed, his eyes wide. It's mocking us. Then we mock it right back, Sera growled, drawing her wand. Stand back, Lysander. She pointed her wand at the unsettling door. Bombarda Maxima. A powerful blast of scarlet light erupted from her wand, slamming into the door. But instead of exploding, the door merely expanded, its mouth stretching wider, revealing a void of inky blackness that seemed to swallow the light. A low, guttural chuckle resonated from within the darkness, sending vibrations through the stone floor. Lysander felt a wave of dizzying despair wash over him. It's useless, Sera. Direct confrontation won't work. It's not a physical barrier, it's a conceptual one. It warps the very effect of our magic into its own sick joke. Just then, a chill wind swept through the corridor, carrying with it a faint, musical tinkling. From the darkness beyond the mocking door, something began to emerge. It was a carousel, but not one of joy. Its wooden horses were skeletal, their eyes glowing with faint, malicious lights, their riders figures of shadow, their forms twisted and contorted in silent, agonizing laughter. The music was a distorted lullaby, playing backwards and forwards simultaneously. The carousel began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, its skeletal horses galloping towards them, their hollow eye sockets fixed on Lysander. The air grew cold, heavy with an almost suffocating despair. Lysander felt his mind starting to unravel, a frantic desperation rising in his throat. This wasn't just an illusion, it was a psychic attack, designed to break his will, to drag him into the Grin's twisted amusement. Images flashed through his mind, his parents' faces contorted into those grotesque grins, beckoning him into the darkness. His own reflection, laughing maniacally at him from a shattered mirror. His greatest fears, his intellectual inadequacy, his fear of failure, all made real and tangible. He stumbled backwards, clutching his head, his breath coming in ragged gasps. It's too much. Sera, though visibly shaken, stood firm. Her Gryffindor courage flared, burning away the encroaching despair. She saw Lysander crumbling, falling prey to the Grin's mental assault, and her loyalty wouldn't permit it. Lysander, no, she roared, her voice cutting through the tinkling, maddening music. She didn't try to banish the carousel, she understood its nature now too. Instead, she grabbed Lysander by the shoulders, shaking him hard. Listen to me. This is its trick. It wants you to despair, it wants you to break. Don't give it what it wants. Her eyes, blazing with conviction, locked onto his. Remember what Professor Blackwood said about interdimensional threats? You can't fight it with a simple curse. You have to fight its influence. Your mind is a shield, Lysander. Build it. Lysander stared at her, her words slowly piercing through the haze of terror. A shield for the mind. Blackwood's cryptic warnings about mental fortitude, about the dangers of losing oneself in the abyss. Sera wasn't telling him to cast a spell, she was telling him to believe. He closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe, to focus on Sera's unwavering presence, her warm hands on his shoulders. He pictured a wall, a barrier of pure logic and unwavering will, pushing back against the encroaching madness. He thought of his parents, not as grinning puppets, but as the loving, brilliant people they were, who taught him to seek understanding, not succumb to chaos. The carousel's music faltered. The shadowy riders seemed to recoil. The spectral horses whinnied, less triumphant, more frustrated. Lysander opened his eyes, a renewed spark of determination in them. The carousel was still there, but it no longer felt insurmountable. He could see the illusion, feel its malevolent intent, but it no longer held him captive. You're right, he said, his voice stronger now. We can't fight it directly. We need a countercurse, a specific ward against its psychological influence, something that shields the mind, not just the body. Sera nodded, a grim smile touching her lips. Exactly. And if Blackwood is hiding from this thing, he's probably already laid down some protection. He'll have the answers. They turned and ran, not towards the mocking door, but away from the Grin's immediate, overwhelming presence. As they rounded a corner, the corridor behind them seemed to ripple and then solidify, the carousel receding into a faint, lingering echo. They had escaped, but the battle was far from over. They found Professor Blackwood not in his office, which was sealed by ancient, crackling wards that seemed to strain against the Grin's influence, but in a hidden chamber beneath the Transfiguration courtyard, accessible only through a forgotten, charmed gargoyle. He was hunched over a heavy, leather-bound tome, surrounded by flickering runes etched into the stone floor. He looked up, his eyes weary but sharp. You faced it, he rasped, and you understood. Direct confrontation is indeed a fool's errand. The Grin does not fight. It plays. And its game is to break your mind. You need a shield, a bulwark against its influence, not a sword. You spoke of an ancient warding ritual, Lysander said, his mind racing, connecting the dots. Something to protect against this specific kind of mental and magical corruption? Blackwood nodded slowly, tapping a gnarled finger on a complex diagram in the book. Precisely. A ritual of conviction, of shared belief. It taps into the deepest wells of human resilience, of hope. But it requires more than just knowledge, Lysander. It requires courage. And it requires a sacrifice. Lysander exchanged a wary glance with Sera. A sacrifice? The Grin of the Void was everywhere, twisting Hogwarts into a nightmare. They had barely escaped its immediate grasp. The idea of facing it again, armed with a ritual of hope and conviction, let alone an unspecified sacrifice, filled him with a fresh wave of dread. But then he looked at Sera, her jaw set, her hand instinctively going to her wand, ready to face whatever came next. And for the first time, Lysander felt a stirring of something beyond intellectual curiosity, a nascent sense of purpose, a flicker of that courageous belief Blackwood spoke of. Tell us, Lysander said, his voice firm, what do we need to do? The chill that clung to Lysander was more than just the biting Scottish air. It was the lingering residue of the Grin's presence, the psychic echo of 1,000 twisted smiles. He and Sera had spent the last 2 days holed up in a forgotten shepherd's hut, deep within a secluded glen, recovering from the psychological assault on Hogwarts. Even here, miles from the school, the sky seemed a shade too gray, the wind's whisper a little too close to a mocking titter. Sera, ever practical, had been patching up their meager supplies, her brow furrowed with a worry she rarely allowed to show. "This map Blackwood gave us," she said, tapping a brittle parchment scrawled with faded runes and erratic lines. "It points to nothing. Just a wild patch of moorland south of Fort William. He said seek the ancient stones, where the first magic sleeps." Lysander traced a finger over a particularly faint glyph. "Not nothing, Sera. The first magic sleeps. That implies a primal, foundational magic, possibly predating even the Ministry. Professor Blackwood specializes in forgotten lore, remember? And the Grin feeds on corruption, on twisting what is. To fight him, we need something uncorruptible." He shivered, despite himself. "Or at least, something less corruptible." "Right, so we're looking for rocks," Sera deadpanned, though a flicker of understanding passed through her eyes. "Ancient, magical rocks. Just our luck." She paused, her hand hovering over a small leather pouch. "Are you all right, Lysander? You've been staring at that fire for an hour." Lysander swallowed, the taste of ash in his mouth. I keep seeing them, Sera. The portraits. They're Grins. And the way Professor Flitwick's wand twisted. It's not just the magic that's warped. It's the intention. The Grin isn't just powerful, he's malicious. He wants to break us, not just kill us. Then we don't let him, Sera said, her voice firm. We fight back. Blackwood said there's a ritual, a warding spell that could seal him, or at least drive him out. It's our only chance. And that ritual is at these ancient stones. She rose, pulling on a thick traveling cloak. Let's move. The longer we wait, the more of the world turns into his personal joke. They operate in stages, making their way across the increasingly desolate Scottish Highlands. The landscape itself seemed to weep, the usual vibrant greens muted, the lochs sullen and gray. Lysander noticed peculiar distortions, a patch of heather that seemed to twist into a grotesque, smiling face before his eyes, only to revert to normal when he blinked, the distant bleating of sheep that sounded eerily like stifled giggles. The air grew heavy, thick with an invisible presence that prickled his skin. As they drew closer to the coordinates on Blackwood's map, the signs became undeniable. Trees stood with branches contorted like limbs frozen in a paroxysm of laughter, their bark peeling to reveal unnatural, blemish-like patterns. The ground beneath their boots felt oddly soft, almost spongy, and a faint, sweet sickly odor hung in the air, like too many sugary treats left to rot. Finally, after hours of trekking, they crested a rise. Below them, nestled in a wide, shallow valley, stood the ancient stones. They were indeed imposing, rough-hewn pillars of dark gray rock, arranged in a ragged circle, some leaning precariously, others half swallowed by the moor. A thin, unnatural mist coiled around their bases, giving them an ethereal, almost spectral quality. But the site was not deserted. A low, guttural murmur reached them, a sound that coalesced into a disturbing chorus of whispers and suppressed giggles. Lysander's stomach clenched. The cult of laughter, he breathed, his voice barely audible. Dozens of figures moved within the stone circle, their movements jerky and unpredictable. They wore tattered robes of indeterminate color, but their faces were what truly chilled Lysander to the bone. Every single one was twisted into a rictus of mirth, a horrifying, permanent grin that stretched their lips and exposed yellowed teeth. Their eyes, however, held no joy, only a vacant, unsettling madness. They're defiling it, Sera whispered, pointing. At the center of the circle, where a larger, almost altar-like stone stood, several cultists were engaged in a grotesque parody of a ritual. They chanted in a discordant drone, their voices raspy with unnatural glee, spilling something thick and dark, blood, Lysander realized with a jolt of horror, onto the ancient stone. It sizzled upon contact, and the air crackled with malevolent magic. They're trying to corrupt the focal point, prevent the warding ritual from ever being performed. Lysander exclaimed, his academic urgency momentarily overcoming his fear. We have to stop them. Easier said than done, Sera muttered, drawing her wand. There are too many. And they're magic. She flinched as a cultist, noticing their presence, let out a piercing cackle and hurled a spell. It wasn't a curse Lysander recognized. Instead, a wave of shimmering, multicolored laughter physically manifested, washing over a nearby boulder and causing it to crack into a dozen shards, each shard glowing with a faint, unsettling glow. It warps reality. Lysander cried. It's chaotic magic. No discernible pattern. Then we aim for the source. Sera shot back, unleashing a powerful stupefy that knocked two cultists off their feet. Lysander, what do we need to do? What's the heart of this ritual? The central stone. It's the anchor. Lysander yelled, drawing his own wand. His hand trembled, but the urgency in Sera's voice, her unwavering courage, steadied him somewhat. He knew his offensive spells were rusty, but his defensive charms were meticulous, learned from years of theoretical study. He threw up a Protego Maxima, a shimmering dome of energy that absorbed another wave of disorienting laughter magic aimed at them. Their movements are erratic, but their focus is on the desecration, Lysander observed, his mind racing, trying to find a pattern in the chaos. They're not just attacking us, they're trying to distract us from their true goal. They're not rational. No kidding. Sera ducked under a sickeningly wide Grin spell that flew past her ear, then retaliated with a precise reducto that blasted a cultist's wand from their hand. They want us to break, Lysander, not necessarily to die. Keep that in mind. A cultist, taller than the others, his grin particularly wide and unsettling, began to levitate, his tattered robes billowing. He raised his arms, and a cacophony of distorted giggles emanated from him, coalescing into a sickly green orb of energy. It pulsed with malevolent mirth. That's a psychological attack, Lysander shouted, recognizing the grin's insidious influence. Don't let it hit you, Sera. It'll flood your mind with despair disguised as amusement. Sera didn't hesitate. Then you handle it, she yelled, charging another group of cultists who were attempting to flank them. Her wand was a blur, her spells direct and forceful. She was a whirlwind of practical magic, a beacon of grounded power against the ethereal madness. Lysander felt a surge of adrenaline. He couldn't rely on brute force. He had to think. The Grin's magic was chaotic, but even chaos had parameters. He focused, his Ravenclaw intellect kicking in, observing the green orb. It radiated malice, yes, but also a specific frequency of emotional distortion. It's a resonance spell, Lysander realized. It amplifies negative emotions, but it's tuned to a specific frequency. A counter-frequency could disrupt it. He frantically cast about in his mind for the inverse harmonic of despairing laughter. It was theoretical, a concept he'd only read about in obscure ancient texts concerning emotional countercharms. But he had to try. He closed his eyes for a split second, picturing a pure, untainted sound, a note of unadulterated hope. He opened his eyes and channeled his magic, not into an attack, but into a complex, multi-layered charm that shimmered with a soft, warm light. He unleashed it, a focused wave of restorative resonance. The green orb, just as it was about to be unleashed by the levitating cultist, shuddered violently. The distorted giggles within it fractured, breaking apart like glass. The cultist screamed, a sound devoid of mirth, and dropped to the ground, twitching as the corrupted magic backfired on him, causing him to weep uncontrollably, his grin momentarily fading. It worked. Sera gasped, momentarily stunned by Lysander's unexpected tactical brilliance. It's temporary, Lysander panted, but it confirms the theory. Their magic can be countered, even if it's illogical. We need to reach that central stone. They fought their way forward, Sera clearing a path with blasts of pure magical force, Lysander providing protective shields and occasionally disarming a cultist with a well-aimed Expelliarmus or a quick, precise countercharm that temporarily broke their warped spells. The air grew thick with the stench of ozone and corrupted magic. The laughter of the cultists intensified, punctuated by their desperate, mad shrieks. As they neared the central altar stone, a particularly deep, resonant peal of laughter echoed from the mist, not from any of the cultists, but from everywhere and nowhere. It was the Grin. His presence was palpable, a suffocating blanket of despair. "You amuse me, little raven," a voice slithered into Lysander's mind, chilling him to the bone. So close, and yet so utterly foolish. Do you truly believe a few old rocks can hold back the inevitable jest? Lysander ignored the taunt, focusing on the goal. Sera blasted away the last few cultists directly guarding the altar, their forms dissolving into shimmering, green mist as their physical manifestations could no longer sustain the Grin's twisted magic. They reached the central stone, panting, wands raised. Lysander's heart plummeted. The once pristine, ancient stone, meant to anchor the warding ritual, was ravaged. Deep fissures marred its surface, glowing with a sickly emerald light. Jagged cracks spiderwebbed across it, pulsing with the same corrupted energy as the cultist spells. At its very heart, where the most potent magical focus should have been, was a gaping, ragged hole, dripping with the dark, thick ichor the cultists had spilled. The stone wasn't just defiled, it was shattered. The Grin's destructive influence had not merely corrupted it, it had fundamentally broken the anchor of the ancient warding ritual. More cultists, attracted by the Grin's mocking presence, began to converge from the swirling mist, their mad grins wider than ever. The chilling, omnipresent laughter of the Grin intensified, resounding around them, promising absolute, inevitable despair. "No," Lysander whispered, his voice cracking, staring at the ruined stone. It's destroyed. It can't be used." Sera spun around, facing the encroaching wave of cultists, her face a mask of grim determination, but even her eyes held a flicker of despair. "Then what do we do, Lysander?" she shouted over the rising din of mad laughter. "This was our last hope." As the cultists advanced, their grins widening into predatory snarls, the Grin's voice filled Lysander's mind again, closer now, a cold, delighted whisper. "Hope? Oh, my dear boy, hope is the funniest joke of all." The air in the ancient chamber hung thick with the scent of dried herbs and ozone, a stark contrast to the cloying, sickly sweet aroma that usually preceded the grinning sickness. Lysander, his spectacles glinting in the faint, pulsating light of the runic circle he'd meticulously drawn, felt a tremor run through his hands. Not of fear, not entirely. It was the hum of latent power, the electric crackle of a theoretical framework about to be tested in the most brutal of practical applications. Sera stood opposite him, her wand gripped tight, her gaze scanning the crumbling walls. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Thorne?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension. "This Binding of the Void ritual isn't exactly in the standard fifth-year curriculum." Lysander adjusted his grip on the relic, a tarnished, obsidian sphere humming faintly in his palm, painstakingly recovered from a forgotten barrow in the Highlands. Professor Blackwood's notes are explicit. The key isn't just the runes or the intent, but a conduit for the entity's own energies. The obsidian sphere acts as a countermagnet, drawing in the corrosive laughter and transmuting it into quiescent stillness. He sounded confident, but the elaborate theoretical explanation was his comfort blanket. He was still Lysander, after all. Blackwood, leaning heavily on his gnarled staff in a shadowed corner, merely grunted. "It's a gamble, boy. The Grin feeds on despair. A direct confrontation isn't a duel of spells, it's a battle of wills. It will try to break you before you can even begin." Lysander nodded, taking a deep breath. "I understand." He met Sera's eyes, and for the first time, he didn't flinch. There was a quiet resolve there, a steel forged in the fire of countless nightmares and shattered expectations. He wasn't just a scholar anymore. He was a leader, however reluctantly. "Ready, Sera?" She gave a curt nod. "Always, Thorne. Just try not to get us killed, all right?" He managed a small, almost imperceptible smile. "My primary objective is always survival, Sera. For us all." He placed the obsidian sphere carefully in the center of the runic circle. As its dull surface touched the ancient stone, The runes flared, a silver-blue light tracing the intricate patterns Lysander had copied from Blackwood's forbidden texts. He began to chant, his voice low at first, then growing in strength and conviction, reciting the forgotten incantations in a language that felt older than magic itself. The chamber responded immediately. A chill seeped into the stone, and the flickering torchlight seemed to recoil, replaced by an oppressive shadow that writhed at the edges of their vision. Then came the laughter. Not human laughter, but 1,000 discordant echoes, a symphony of derision that scraped against the inside of Lysander's skull. It was a sound designed to unravel sanity, to reduce every noble effort to a pathetic joke. The Grin was here. Projections began to manifest. Lysander saw his parents, their faces contorted in mocking grins, their eyes empty and black. "Oh, Lysander, still hiding in your books?" Still too afraid to do anything, his father's voice sneered, distorted by the Grin's omnipresent cackle. "We left because we couldn't stand to watch you fail." Doubt, cold and sharp, pierced Lysander's concentration. His breath hitched. He closed his eyes, forcing the image away. He knew this trick. Blackwood had warned him. This was the Grin's psychological warfare. He opened his eyes, focusing on the shimmering runes, pushing the incantation forward. Then the laughter intensified, and the walls themselves seemed to melt, reforming into the endless corridors of the Hogwarts library. Only this time, every book cover depicted a grinning, grotesque face, and the shelves writhed like living things, snapping at him with razor-sharp spines. He saw himself, a timid first year, tripping over his robes, while the spectral faces of his peers pointed and roared with cruel amusement. "You're a joke, Thorne," 1,000 voices shrieked, coalescing into a single, piercing sneer from the darkness. "Your parents were fools, your aunt is a failure, and you are merely a footnote in the grand, hilarious tragedy of the world." Lysander felt his control waver. The runes flickered. He could feel the despair clawing at the edges of his mind, threatening to drag him down into the Grin's abyss. He wanted to retreat, to curl up and hide. He wanted to believe them because it felt true. But then, Sera's hand clamped down on his shoulder, warm and solid. "No," she roared, her voice cutting through the cacophony. She spun, her wand flashing, sending a bolt of pure, defiant light at a particularly virulent manifestation of a grinning Dumbledore. "Don't listen to it, Lysander. It's all lies." Her simple, unwavering belief was a lifeline. He remembered the feel of her hand, the steady resolve in her eyes. He remembered Blackwood's gruff determination. He remembered what they were fighting for, not just himself, but everyone. His intellectual pursuit of patterns and logic suddenly felt insufficient. This wasn't about facts. It was about the raw, irrational power of defiance. He looked at the obsidian sphere, drawing strength from its silent, immutable presence. The Grin wanted to turn everything into a joke, to prove that hope was an illusion. But what if hope wasn't an illusion? What if it was the most potent magic of all? Lysander took another deep breath, his eyes burning with a fierce, quiet fire. He focused his will, not just on the words, but on the meaning behind them, the desire for order, for peace, for sanity. He poured every ounce of his analytical mind, every shred of his newfound courage, into the ritual. The runes flared brighter, a beacon against the encroaching darkness. The Grin recoiled, its laughter faltering for a moment. It manifested more fully now, a shifting, shadowy figure with far too many teeth, a malicious grin stretching impossibly wide across a face that was both familiar and utterly alien. "You fool. You think a few dusty words can stop me? I am the unraveling. I am the truth of chaos. You are a parasite." Lysander shot back, his voice ringing with a newfound authority, an echo of the logical patterns he so revered. "You feed on what you cannot create. You are entropy, but entropy only wins if we let it. We choose order." As he spoke, he channeled the magic, twisting the Grin's chaotic energies, drawing them into the obsidian sphere. The sphere pulsed, drinking in the insidious laughter, the despair, the maddening joy, and began to thrum with a deep, resonant hum. The air grew colder, but it was a clear, crisp cold, not the oppressive chill of the Grin. Sera, meanwhile, was a whirlwind of motion. A wave of skeletal hands reached for Lysander, but she intercepted them with a blasting curse that dissolved them into dust. A tendril of shadow tried to wrap around his ankle. Her Patronus, a magnificent, soaring falcon, swooped down, tearing at the darkness with talons of light. Blackwood, though mostly observing, sent subtle counter-curses to disrupt the Grin's more physical manifestations, a silent guardian in the corner. Lysander closed his eyes again, but this time, he wasn't retreating. He was focusing. He felt the tendrils of the Grin's mind, attempting to infiltrate his, to whisper doubt, to mock his every thought. But he built walls, not of fear, but of logic, of unwavering purpose. He saw the patterns of its malevolence, the predictable loops of its despair, and he found the counter-patterns, the inverse equations of hope and belief. Give in, Thorne. It's easier. Join the joke. Everyone ends up laughing in the end. The Grin's voice shrieked inside his mind, now laced with a hint of desperation. No, Lysander whispered, though his voice was amplified by the ritual, booming through the chamber. Not this laughter. Not this despair. There are other kinds of laughter. And other kinds of hope. He pushed harder, pouring his own intent, his own will, into the sphere. The obsidian sphere began to glow with an intense, internal light, throbbing like a captured star. The Grin's form, once vast and amorphous, began to shrink, pulled inexorably towards the glowing orb. Its laughter turned into a gurgle, then a choked cough, and finally, a strangled, resentful silence. The chamber shuddered. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The illusionary walls dissolved, revealing the rough stone once more. The chilling cold receded, replaced by the normal, damp chill of a forgotten underground space. With a final, agonizing groan, the last vestige of the Grin was sucked into the obsidian sphere. The orb pulsed once more, then dimmed, becoming a smooth, unblemished black. The runes around it faded, their light extinguished. Silence. Profound, absolute silence. No laughter, no whispers, no unsettling shadows. Lysander collapsed to his knees, utterly spent, but a weary smile touched his lips. He looked at the obsidian sphere, now inert, and then at Sera, who rushed to his side. You did it, Thorne, she whispered, her voice thick with awe. She helped him up, her arms steady around his shoulders. Blackwood emerged from the shadows, his face grim, but his eyes holding a spark of something akin to admiration. A binding, yes. A powerful one. He picked up the obsidian sphere. It felt cold and unnaturally heavy in his hand. But a sealed void is still a void, Lysander. And voids, they tend to leak. He looked at the sphere, then at Lysander, a new concern etched onto his ancient face. This is merely the first act. It will return. And when it does, it will remember.